Today, I want to talk about a kind of woman we don't often see, not because she doesn't exist, but because she's not the loudest voice in the room. She might not have millions of followers on social media or her name on a big billboard, but she's rare. And her rarity isn't about her beauty, her accomplishments, or her status. It's about her courage, her authenticity, and her willingness to show up when it matters most. Embracing imperfections is a radical act in a world that constantly pushes us to strive for flawlessness. From a young age, we are taught to reach for perfection. Whether it's in our appearance, our achievements, or our relationships, we're bombarded with images of idealized lives on social media, photoshopped faces on magazine covers, and the pressure to meet societal expectations. We learn to hide the parts of ourselves that we think aren't good enough, hoping that if we can just get it right, whatever it is will be accepted and loved. But the truth is, the pursuit of perfection is exhausting and unfulfilling. It's a moving target that we can never fully reach. Embracing imperfections, on the other hand, is about recognizing that our worth isn't tied to how flawlessly we present ourselves to the world. It's about understanding that our quirks, our scars, and our so-called flaws are what make us unique and human. When we embrace our imperfections, we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, rather than hiding behind a mask of what we think we should be. This isn't an easy process. It requires vulnerability and courage because we're letting go of the need to appear perfect and instead choosing to be real. To embrace imperfections means to stop seeing them as problems to fix and start viewing them as integral parts of our story. It's about realizing that our struggles, our mistakes, and our failures are part of what shapes us into who we are today. When we look back at our lives, it's often the moments when things didn't go as planned that taught us the most. It's in our setbacks that we find resilience, and in our failures that we learn humility and empathy. By acknowledging our imperfections, we open ourselves up to the possibility of growth and self-compassion. We stop punishing ourselves for not meeting unrealistic standards and start treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend. One of the most powerful aspects of embracing imperfections is the freedom it brings. When we stop trying to meet impossible standards, we free ourselves from the weight of constant self-criticism and judgment. We no longer have to pretend that we have everything figured out. Instead, we can admit that we're still learning, still growing, and that's okay. This freedom allows us to live more authentically, without the pressure to constantly prove our worth to others. It lets us show up as our true selves in our relationships, making deeper and more genuine connections with those around us. The idea of embracing imperfections also extends beyond just our personal lives. In our relationships, both personal and professional, we often feel the need to appear strong and capable at all times. We're afraid that if we show any sign of weakness, we'll be judged or seen as less competent. But when we embrace our imperfections, we give others permission to do the same. We create an environment where vulnerability is not only accepted, but celebrated. This kind of authenticity fosters trust and connection, which are the foundations of any healthy relationship. It's the moments when we let our guard down, where we admit that we're struggling or that we don't have all the answers, that we truly connect with others on a deeper level. In embracing imperfections, we also learn to redefine success. Instead of measuring our worth by external achievements or by how well we meet societal standards, we begin to value the qualities that make us human: kindness, empathy, courage, and resilience. We start to see success as the ability to show up fully, to be present, and to live in alignment with our values rather than simply ticking off boxes on a checklist of accomplishments. This shift in perspective allows us to find joy and fulfillment in the present moment rather than constantly chasing an idealized future that may never come. The act of embracing imperfections is a practice, not a one-time decision. It's something we have to choose every day in the small moments when we're tempted to criticize ourselves or hide our flaws. It's in the decision to speak up even when we're not sure we have the perfect words, to show up to an event even when we're not feeling our best, or to try something new even if we might fail. Each time we make the choice to embrace our imperfections, we build a little more resilience and a little more self-compassion. This practice of self-acceptance doesn't mean we stop striving to be better. It's not about complacency or giving up on growth. Rather, it's about recognizing that we are already worthy, even as we continue to evolve. It's about holding space for both our strengths and our weaknesses, our light and our shadow, and understanding that both are integral parts of who we are. When we embrace our imperfections, we stop seeing them as things that diminish our worth and start seeing them as what makes us beautifully human. We begin to understand that the cracks in our armor are what let the light in, and the messy, imperfect parts of us are often the most beautiful. It's our vulnerability, our willingness to be seen as we are, that creates true connection and love. By embracing our imperfections, we give ourselves the permission to be fully alive, to show up in the world as our authentic selves, and to find the freedom and joy that come from simply being who we are without apology. In this way, embracing imperfections becomes a powerful act of self love and a step towards living a more wholehearted and authentic life. Choosing courage over comfort is a decision that often feels daunting because it requires us to step into the unknown. Comfort is familiar and safe. It's the place where we know what to expect and how to act. It's the space where we avoid risks, stick to routines, and stay within the boundaries of what we already know. But comfort can also be a trap. It keeps us from pursuing our true potential and living a life aligned with our deepest values. It's tempting to stay in our comfort zones because they offer a sense of security, but the most meaningful moments in our lives rarely happen when we play it safe. Courage, on the other hand, asks us to take a leap of faith. It invites us to venture beyond the boundaries of what we know and step into new territory where we can grow, learn, and transform. Choosing courage means being willing to face discomfort, uncertainty, and fear in the pursuit of something greater. It's the decision to raise our hand in a meeting and voice a new idea, even if it might be met with skepticism. It's the moment we decide to have a difficult conversation with a friend or partner, knowing it could lead to conflict, but also to deeper understanding. It's when we choose to apply for a job we aren't fully qualified for because we believe in our potential to grow into the role. Choosing courage over comfort is about embracing vulnerability. When we choose courage, we are essentially choosing to be vulnerable, to expose parts of ourselves that we usually keep hidden. It means being willing to say, I don't know, or I need help, and risking the discomfort that comes with admitting we don't have all the answers. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the ultimate form of strength because it requires us to show up as our true selves without the protection of a perfect facade. When we let go of the need to be perfect and embrace our vulnerability, we create space for connection, growth, and authenticity. The irony of choosing comfort over courage is that while it might protect us in the short term, it often leads to long-term dissatisfaction. Staying in our comfort zone might feel good initially, but over time, it can lead to feelings of stagnation, regret, and a sense of unfulfilled potential. We may look back and realize that the fear of discomfort kept us from pursuing our dreams, standing up for ourselves, or making a meaningful impact. The discomfort of courage, however, is temporary. It's the discomfort of stepping onto a stage to give a speech, of sharing a vulnerable story, or of taking the first step toward a big goal. This kind of discomfort fades with time and is often replaced by a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. Choosing courage isn't about being fearless. It's about feeling fear and deciding to act anyway. It's recognizing that fear is a natural part of stepping into the unknown, but refusing to let it dictate our choices. When we wait for fear to disappear before taking action, we often end up waiting forever. The truth is, the things that scare us most are often the things that matter the most. If we let fear control our actions, we end up living a smaller life, one defined by limitations rather than possibilities. Courage is about acknowledging our fear, feeling it fully, and still choosing to move forward. There is immense power in even the smallest acts of courage. It might seem insignificant to share a new idea at work or to try a new hobby despite the fear of failure, but these moments add up. Each time we choose courage over comfort, we build a little more resilience, a little more strength. We start to trust ourselves more, realizing that we can handle the discomfort that comes with stepping outside our comfort zones. This builds confidence, making it easier to choose courage the next time around. It becomes a practice, a muscle we strengthen every time we face discomfort head on instead of retreating. Choosing courage also has a ripple effect. When we show up courageously, we give others permission to do the same. It's inspiring to witness someone embrace discomfort, be it a colleague who speaks up about an issue everyone else is avoiding or a friend who decides to leave a stable job to pursue a passion. Their courage challenges us to question our own choices, to examine the ways we might be playing small in our own lives. It creates a culture of authenticity and bravery where people feel safe to be themselves and to take risks. In relationships, choosing courage over comfort means having the hard conversations instead of avoiding them. It means being willing to say, I'm sorry, or I was wrong, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about being honest about our feelings, needs, and boundaries rather than suppressing them to keep the peace. While choosing comfort might avoid conflict in the short term, it often leads to misunderstandings, resentment, and disconnection in the long run. Courageous conversations, though difficult, pave the way for deeper intimacy and trust. They allow us to be seen and heard for who we truly are, rather than as a polished version of ourselves. At its core, choosing courage over comfort is about living a life that aligns with our values, even when it's hard. It's about making decisions based on what we believe is right, rather than what feels easy. It's recognizing that the path of least resistance often leads us away from our true selves. When we choose courage, we choose to step into our power to live authentically and to take ownership of our story. It's a commitment to showing up fully, even when we're afraid, even when it's uncomfortable, because we know that the rewards of a courageous life far outweigh the temporary ease of comfort. Prioritizing connection over comparison is a shift that can transform how we experience ourselves and our relationships. In a society obsessed with ranking, status, and competition, it's easy to get caught up in the habit of comparing ourselves to others. We look at someone else's achievements, appearance, lifestyle, or success and immediately measure it against our own. This constant comparison can be draining, leading to feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and low self-worth. It creates a mindset where our sense of value is dependent on how we stack up against others rather than on our intrinsic qualities. However, when we choose connection over comparison, we foster a sense of belonging, authenticity, and mutual support that comparison can never provide. Comparison is a thief of joy because it shifts our focus outward, away from our own growth and happiness. When we're busy comparing ourselves to others, we're not truly living our own lives. Instead, we're stuck in a cycle of measuring up, trying to match or outdo someone else's successes or lifestyle. It's a zero-sum game where someone else's win feels like our loss. We might look at a friend's promotion, a colleague's new car, or a stranger's social media post and immediately feel less than, as if their success diminishes our own. This mindset prevents us from celebrating others' achievements, and more importantly, it stops us from genuinely connecting with them. Instead of seeing their success as a threat, we should recognize that it is possible to celebrate others while still appreciating our unique paths. Choosing connection means shifting from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. Comparison thrives on the idea that there's only so much success, love, or happiness to go around, creating a sense of competition among us. But in reality, there is an abundance of these things. Someone else's success doesn't take away from our potential for success, just as another person's joy doesn't limit our capacity for joy. When we understand this, we can genuinely celebrate others without feeling threatened. This mindset fosters a culture of support where we uplift one another instead of tearing each other down. It builds a sense of community where we can learn from each other and grow together rather than trying to outshine one another. Choosing connection over comparison requires us to be vulnerable. It's about showing up authentically without the need to put on a facade of perfection. When we compare, we often present a version of ourselves that we think will measure up. We hide our struggles, imperfections, and insecurities, trying to appear as though we have it all together. But this creates a barrier between us and others, making it hard to form genuine connections. True connection happens when we let down our guard, when we allow others to see us as we are with all our strengths and weaknesses. It's about being willing to say, this is me, imperfect and real, and letting others see our true selves. This kind of vulnerability can be scary, but it's also incredibly powerful because it opens the door to authentic relationships. When we prioritize connection, we focus on the quality of our relationships rather than on how we measure up in comparison to others. We become more interested in understanding others, in hearing their stories and experiences, and in building meaningful bonds. We start to value the richness that comes from diverse perspectives and the depth of sharing our authentic selves with one another. In these moments of true connection, we feel seen, heard, and valued for who we are, not for what we have or what we've achieved. This sense of belonging is what we're often seeking when we engage in comparison, but it can never be found in trying to outdo others. It's found in the moments when we open our hearts and connect. Moreover, prioritizing connection over comparison encourages us to embrace empathy. When we compare ourselves to others, we often make quick judgments about their lives based on what we see on the surface. We might assume that someone who seems successful or happy has it all figured out without considering the challenges and struggles they might be facing behind the scenes. By choosing connection, we replace judgment with curiosity and empathy. We start to understand that everyone has their own battles, their own insecurities, and their own stories that aren't visible from the outside. This understanding helps us build deeper, more compassionate relationships because we're approaching others from a place of empathy rather than envy or judgment. Choosing connection over comparison also allows us to focus on our own personal growth and fulfillment. When we stop fixating on how we measure up to others, we can turn our attention inward and ask ourselves what truly matters to us. We can set our own goals based on our values, passions, and interests rather than being influenced by what others are doing. This shift is liberating because it allows us to pursue a life that feels authentic and meaningful to us, rather than one dictated by societal expectations or the achievements of others. It's about realizing that our worth is not determined by external markers of success, but by our own sense of purpose and fulfillment. In the end, prioritizing connection over comparison helps us build a community of support rather than rivalry. It's about celebrating our shared humanity, recognizing that we all have dreams, struggles, and moments of self-doubt. When we focus on connection, we create spaces where people feel safe to be themselves, to share their highs and lows without fear of judgment. We cultivate relationships that are built on mutual respect and understanding rather than competition and envy. This sense of community is what sustains us, what gives us strength during tough times, and what brings true joy into our lives. By choosing connection, we not only uplift others, but also find a deeper sense of belonging and fulfillment in our own lives. Practicing vulnerability is one of the most challenging yet rewarding experiences we can undertake in our lives. At its core, vulnerability is about showing up and allowing ourselves to be truly seen, even when it feels uncomfortable or risky. It involves stepping into situations where we cannot control the outcome, where there is a possibility of rejection, judgment, or failure. For many of us, this is terrifying because we have been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. We fear that showing our true selves, our fears, insecurities, and flaws will make us appear fragile or inadequate. But in reality, vulnerability is the most accurate measure of courage. It's a powerful act of strength because it requires us to confront the uncertainty of life head on and embrace the possibility of being hurt or misunderstood. When we practice vulnerability, we are choosing to let go of the masks we wear to protect ourselves. We often present a curated version of ourselves to the world, showing only the parts that we think are acceptable or impressive. We hide our struggles, downplay our failures, and project an image of competence and confidence. This tendency to put up walls is a natural defense mechanism. It's our way of shielding ourselves from potential pain. However, by doing this, we also block ourselves from the full range of human connection and emotion. True connection, whether in friendships, romantic relationships, or even professional interactions, can only happen when we let down our guard and allow others to see us as we are flawed, imperfect, and real. Vulnerability is not just about sharing our struggles, it's also about sharing our hopes, dreams, and desires. It's about saying, I love you first, even when we're not sure how the other person will respond. It's about asking for help when we feel overwhelmed, even if it makes us uncomfortable to admit we can't do it all on our own. It's about trying something new and risking failure because the potential reward is worth it. Practicing vulnerability means daring to be authentic in a world that often encourages us to be anything but. It's standing in our truth, even when it feels like the ground beneath us is shaking. The fear of being vulnerable often stems from the belief that if people see our true selves, they might not like or accept us. We fear that our imperfections make us unworthy of love and belonging. But this belief is a myth. In fact, our imperfections are what make us human and relatable. When we allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are, we give others the permission to do the same. It's through our shared vulnerabilities that we form deep, meaningful connections. It's when we admit our fears and insecurities that we realize we are not alone in our struggles. This shared humanity is the foundation of empathy and compassion, which are essential for building strong, authentic relationships. Practicing vulnerability also opens the door to personal growth. When we choose to be vulnerable, we create opportunities for learning and self-discovery. We become more aware of our strengths and weaknesses, our fears and desires. We learn to embrace our full range of emotions, from joy and excitement to sadness and disappointment. This emotional openness allows us to experience life more fully rather than numbing ourselves to avoid pain. It's through facing our fears and embracing our discomfort that we grow and become stronger. Each time we practice vulnerability, we build resilience. We learn that we can survive rejection, failure, and criticism, and that these experiences, while painful, do not define our worth. In professional settings, practicing vulnerability can be transformative. It might seem counterintuitive in environments that often emphasize strength, competence, and control, but vulnerability is essential for effective leadership and teamwork. When leaders admit they don't have all the answers, it creates a culture of openness and trust. It encourages employees to share their ideas, ask questions, and take risks without fear of judgment. Vulnerability in the workplace fosters innovation because it creates a safe space for creativity and honest feedback. It also humanizes leaders, making them more relatable and approachable, which strengthens their relationships with their teams. One of the most significant barriers to practicing vulnerability is the fear of being judged or criticized. We worry about what others will think if they see us struggling or making mistakes. This fear can be paralyzing, keeping us from taking risks or speaking our truth. However, it's important to remember that everyone experiences fear and self-doubt. When we open up about our insecurities, we often find that others can relate. This realization can be liberating, as it helps to break down the illusion of perfection that we hold ourselves and others to. It reminds us that we are all imperfect, and that's okay. Practicing vulnerability also requires self-compassion. When we decide to open up, we must be kind to ourselves, especially if things don't go as planned. We might face rejection, criticism, or failure, but these experiences do not diminish our value. Being vulnerable means accepting that we are human, that we make mistakes, and that it's okay to not have it all together all the time. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend who is struggling. This self-compassion is crucial because it gives us the courage to keep showing up, to keep trying, even when it's hard. Ultimately, practicing vulnerability is about choosing to live authentically. It's about embracing the messiness of life and allowing ourselves to be seen, even when it's uncomfortable. It's a journey of courage, self-acceptance, and connection. By choosing vulnerability, we open ourselves up to deeper relationships, greater creativity, and a more fulfilling life. We step into our power not by pretending to be invulnerable, but by acknowledging that our willingness to be seen in our entirety, our strengths, our struggles, our dreams, and our fears is what makes us truly strong and truly human.